The staff, each one of them picked up their handkerchiefs, dampened it, put it around their nose and mouth, just tied it up like that, and said, okay, now you can start the breakage, and they continued their counting. And I think that day, at midnight, when I saw that happen, I knew that this culture was here to stay. Because these things cannot be put into rule books. That we have given a commitment and the settlement has to be committed and completed on Friday has to be there in every member, otherwise the service delivery doesn't happen. And I think that culture of discipline is very important if we have to continue to inspire confidence and build our credibility in the system. And I would certainly think that that's a feature that we cannot miss as a big contributor to the success of the institution. So actually, when I ponder about many of these factors, I always think there's really nothing which is so sophisticated or so path-breaking that I can count on my fingers and say, this is what contributed to our success. I cannot say that it was the great product ideas we had, it's the great technology that we brought to the table, because everyone has an opportunity to do those products, everyone has an opportunity to do those to do that technology. Maybe our sense of urgency got us to do it a little faster, a little earlier than the rest, but that's okay. So then what is the difference? It's actually very, very simple things like this. And sometimes I wonder whether it is true. But when I think back and I see the consistency with which it yields results to us, maybe there is a tale here. Nowadays, there is a lot of discussion when we talk of industrial success in industry, success in business, about is success short term, is success long term, do you really work for the short term, do you really work for the long term? I must say that I find it difficult to fathom an idea of working from quarter to quarter and being able to create enduring results. A quarter to quarter focus is essential from a discipline perspective. But if the only things we are going to do are the things that impact the next quarter, I am afraid that doesn't really, gel in my head as something that leads to a lasting impact or something that contributes to building an institution which is sustainable, which will be there for the next 100 years. In my own industry, we have a very strong facet of regulatory responsibilities, which is very unlike many other industries. Now, many can argue that the regulatory responsibilities run counter to our business development responsibilities. If I'm going to police my customers want to run far away from me. We can argue that, sure. But on the other hand, the regulatory role is really what helps us improve the governance in the sector. The regulatory role is what helps us manage risk better in the sector. The regulatory role is what helps us improve intermediary standing, reputation with the final customer. And every one of this is in the long-term interest of the customer, of the intermediary, and the industry. So if we have to balance the regulatory role and the development role that we play, we necessarily have to look at a medium to long-term impact of decisions that we take, of the actions that we take. Again, we wanted to start the derivative market sometime in 1997. There was a lot of concern at that point of time. Derivatives, weapons of mass destruction. Till today we say that, right? Weapons of mass destruction. So there was a lot of concern that, are we really letting the genie out of the box and should we be launching derivatives, etc. So we felt the best way to address this was to go out and educate people, to go out and make people aware. 3 years, close to 3 years, close to 1,000 camps or workshops or seminars we conducted ahead of time. Before, in 2000, the regulator then developed the comfort that yes, we can probably start these products. Development by itself, people think, runs counter to profitability goals. But development makes a lot of business sense. Market development makes a lot of business sense. And you can do market development only if you have a little more than a short-term approach to the business that you're doing. So, as long as the short-term fits into the long-term approach of an organization, it works. Else, the short-term value that is created, I am not sure how we will make that sustain in the long term. In fact, our vision over the 18 years, and despite what we are today compared to what we were then, has really not changed. When we had the mandate, it was to transform the markets, which is basically for the financial well-being of all stakeholders. Till today, our vision remains the same, which is committed to the financial well-being of all our stakeholders. And it's unlikely to change. How we do can change. But if this is our dharma, then necessarily our role has to be a little more than a quarter-to-quarter or a short-term role that we play. In fact, I'm always reminded of what Merck said when he said that we create medicines for the welfare, for the well-being of patients. We don't create it for profitability. Profits follow. Whenever we do good work, profits follow. And the same thing applies in our industry. You create value for your stakeholders, profits will follow. You do good work, profits will follow. But if you earn profits, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have created value. And that is the conscience test that I think is very important for an institution to keep reminding itself, to know that it is on the track that it set out to. So, as a conscience keeper, are you on track with your values? If you started out with integrity, fairness, deep social impact, and financial well-being, today are you on track doing the same things? It doesn't matter that you do it differently. But are you delivering the same end goal is what I think is an acid test for any institution to ask itself. So, in closing, I'll only wrap up saying that 18 years, and it looks like every day we have this opportunity to create impact. And as long as there is a passion within any institution to be able to recognize that they are doing what they set out to do, there is progress. Second, are we still questioning our basics? Are we questioning our basics every day? Are we questioning our principles every day? Are we going out there with an open mind, willing to learn, willing to question ourselves every day? Are we willing to take risks? Or are we getting sloppy because we've become big? Because we think we can't jeopardize our current business? Of course we can't. But is that making us sloppy? Do we still have the culture of discipline? Do we still have the passion to go out and meet our commitments? I think these are the very few simple things that at the end of the day, I think has worked so far for NSE, and I hope it continues to work for us. And therefore, I would really say that these are the lessons we have learned as consistently contributing to building an institution that will last beyond us. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for the insightful and thought-provoking speech. I am told that Ms. Chitra is keen on students in addition to delivering a formal lecture. She has kindly consented to respond to a few queries from the audience. May I request you to use the mic provided by the volunteers?
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Paminderjeet from second year PGDM. In your talk, you mentioned about the culture of professionalism in every member of the institution. I would like to know how the leaders at the top or the founding members of any institution make that thing happen.
There is no better teacher than by example. You pick the right people then to sort of enhance the team. As long as everyone's doing what they're saying, and as long as you're picking the right people and letting the wrong people go, I think the culture will automatically set in.
Hi ma'am, I'm Pushkar from PGP1. Having known that the investments the return on investments in markets is tax-free in a long term, what has NSE done to educate people to invest more in stock markets? And what do you feel as a young generation, what is the correct time to enter into markets? Can you give your insights on this?
Let me start by saying that NSE has been involved with education for a very long time now, for more than 10 years, formally and informally. And our basic premise is we are involved in education to help people take better financial decisions. We believe that financial literacy is a life skill, and at all levels people need to understand that element of financial planning which can improve their lives. Now, why am I saying this? So, most of my education is around basic financial literacy and financial education, and much lesser is around asking them to invest in the stock markets. Because if you look at it from the larger good perspective, there is a life cycle. People first save, then they put it into completely non-risk instruments, then they move some into instruments which are managed by others, and then they probably go into instruments which they want to manage themselves. So, it depends really on where a person is at that point in time. Has he never done anything beyond his bank savings or fixed deposits? Has he done something with mutual funds? Or he doesn't want to do anything which is linked to market risks? If so, we don't even go down that path. As an exchange, I am not, and I will never be only a stock exchange. My objective is to provide the variety of financial products that will suit everyone's appetite. And my objective is to make people understand what they should be doing, rather than telling them to invest in X, Y, or Z. Today, that is why we have a lot of financial education in the school level. We have also brought in this at the 11th and 12th level. We also run a lot of certification around, other professionals who want to gain some knowledge in finance. The short answer is there is a life cycle. I will not ask people to invest in equity on day one. I will tell them to first move up the curve in terms of understanding risk returns, getting into non-risk products, then getting into products like funds which are managed by others, and then only move down the cycle where they need to have the time and the understanding to take stock decisions on their own.
That NSE is now performs two roles. It wants to grow, and it has a regulatory function also. So in today's situation where the fears are high, how do you manage that growth function?
Actually, any downturn in markets is an opportunity for exchanges to improve service, to bring in service innovation so that people's cost goes down. Second, to look at products which are de-risking products. There are products that accentuate risk. There are products that help you manage risk better. So it is actually the right time for exchanges to spend time and energy, and which is what NSE does, in terms of service and product innovations. And in fact, this is the time when intermediaries and the market at large is also willing to spend that time to understand what the opportunities are. When the going is good, nobody has the time. So I would say that this is actually the right moment for us to bring in those kind of innovations.
I'm Kushankur, faculty in finance. I'm curious to know about that India after financial crisis has witnessed, and other countries also, have been witnessing the wave of takeover, that is merger and acquisition. For example, Philippine Stock Exchange, Korean Stock Exchange, Australian Stock Exchange. But in what way would you like to comment on this in near future? Maybe NSE will take over few exchanges, something. And apart from this, there is little known about the establishment or introduction of S&P 500 CNX Nifty. If I search Google and other web links, I can get very few things. Would you like to say something about the introduction of S&P 500 CNX Nifty as the first index product on electronic platform? Thank you.
You were talking about the Nifty or the S&P 500? Which one? That's the flagship index you're talking about. Okay. Because we've also introduced the global indices recently, the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones. Okay. Coming to your first question, which is the takeover and mergers and trends. Frankly, if you look at several of the American and the European markets in the last 4 or 5 years, their rate of growth had significantly slowed down. So their opportunities within were shrinking. And from their own perspective, the only way to grow was really a balance sheet expansion, which is to go out and see other markets where there is growth and fold that into the balance sheet, really. So from their perspective, perhaps it made sense because they didn't have too many opportunities to grow within. Even in those cases, many of the mergers are still halfway underway, and the jury is out on whether they have really succeeded. My own take is these are very, very complex transactions. More than just the balance sheet, folding in, there is a huge customer, meld. There are technology integrations. There are people integrations across continents, and these are not trivial. And therefore, they take several years. And many times, the benefits, the purported benefits for which they were, started, perhaps doesn't materialize. So they are all transactions where the jury is still out. I mean, they definitely have a lot of sensational value because, when you do these acquisitions, it hits the papers, everyone's happy for a while and so on. But I would be very mixed in my response to this. When you look at India, India is one of the markets where there is abundant opportunity for growth. We are talking of one of the highest savings rates in the world. And we are talking of one of the smallest savings coming into the market. So it's a unique combination. So if you look at opportunities within India, there is huge opportunity for domestic growth. And I would believe that the exchanges should certainly first focus on domestic expansion before they worry about, any other acquisitions. Yes, it's an integrated world, and so our products should be accessible to other markets. Other products should be accessible in Indian markets. So there should be business strategic alliances between countries, no doubt. But it does not have to result in financial acquisitions or, organizational mergers, in order to give the benefit. On the second thought, S&P CNX Nifty was really our flagship product. It was, in fact, from the day we started the cash equity market, we were very clear that we wanted to create our own index, and we knew that that's really the way to make a market-specific product available to retail investors to participate in the market. The beauty of indexes, even the retail investor can take a call on the market without worrying about a balance sheet, without worrying about what this company is doing or not doing or its announcements and so on. So an index is perhaps the best asset that an exchange has. So our collaboration with S&P and our own homegrown expertise in this helped us develop this product. Gratefully today it is the second most widely traded product in the world in terms of the Nifty options. So it has got tremendous acceptance